So thank you very much. It is a great pleasure to be here with you this afternoon with this fantastic group of students. And I can say that through our Education Equity Initiative, there are many more of them. We could only bring a few with us today, but we are very pleased that we were able to be at your convention. I have to introduce Naya Berg, who is our education equity organizer and has really been responsible for gathering up this group today and the ongoing work that we do. And I'm not going to say a lot. I want us to get right going with the panel, but please do know that we are a regional civil rights organization, and Education Equity Initiative is one of our program areas. We've also done a lot of work around fair housing, a lot of research and policy advocacy, etc. And our education of the general public and our professional development with educators and students are also activities that we engage in. So I am going to introduce our distinguished moderator. And I would begin by saying that he's one of you. He was a math teacher before he started his 16 years in higher education. And that's Dr. Mark Anthony Gooden. And he is the Christian A. Johnson Endeavor Professor in Education Leadership and Director of the Endeavor Leadership Initiative in the Department of Organization and Leadership at Teachers College, Columbia University. That is a mouthful. And I could also tell you that even though 16 years is a relatively short time, we could use up all of our time in this workshop with me telling you all of the exciting and wonderful things that he has done in his 16 years in higher education. I will just tell you that his research interests include the principalship, anti-racist leadership, urban educational leadership, and legal issues in education. And he has appeared in many publications. And he has, his leadership has included serving 2 terms as a member of the executive committee and is immediate past president of the University Council for Educational Administration, which is a consortium of 100 higher education institutions committed to advancing the preparation and practice of educational leaders for the benefit of schools and children. So I am going to stop there in my introduction of Dr. Gooden, but you can look him up, and if you have a couple of hours available, you can read a lot of wonderful things about him. So thank you very much, Dr. Gooden, and let's give our panel.
Thank you, Elaine, for that lovely introduction. I'm going to ask for your pardon today because my voice is not as strong as usual. I was down in D.C. Last couple of days, and every time I go there, I have like some kind of allergic reaction, and this time, I love that area. I'm not sure what's going on now. So what I'm going to do is just tell you briefly what the outline of the panel is going to be, and then I'm going to turn it over to the students. They are indeed the stars. We've already been talking to them about that, and student voice is so important. Naya and I were talking earlier about it's often missing in educational research. We ask teachers what they think, we ask leaders, we ask board members, we ask community members, but we sometimes forget to ask students. So today you're in for a treat because you're going to get to hear firsthand from students about equity. So I'm really excited. So let me just kind of tell you how things will go. So in the interest of full disclosure, this is Education Equity, Student Voices. Our goal is for educators and students to discuss how to achieve greater equity for students and schools, for students to inform future policy changes for positive educational reform. So a rough outline of today's panel. I'm going to introduce the students in this, well, they're going to introduce themselves, and they're going to give you their name, and they're going to tell you a hope for today's session, a hope that they have. And that's going to take about 10 minutes. We're going to do all of the panelists today, right for this first session, but we're going to be focusing on the first 4 for this session, and then the next 5 in the second session. So stick around for that one. And then after they do that, I'm just going to ask them a round of questions. They don't have to answer every question, but they'll get a chance to respond to the questions that they like, and that will be part of a conversation. We're not going to be so rigid that we're going to stick to the questions. And then finally, this is going to be even more exciting for you because you're going to get a chance to ask them questions in the last 15 minutes of the session. 15 minutes of this session, sorry. So there you have it. That's kind of the outline. I assure you they have a lot to share, and it's going to go very quickly. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Gabby.
Hi, I'm Gabriella Daza. I'm a senior. I go to Meckham High School in Belmore on Long Island. And my hope for today is for us as students to gain a better understanding of you all as administrators, and for you all to gain a better understanding of us and the things that we experience from day to day and the problems that we face, and get together and figure out how to solve these problems. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Mia Dickinson. I'm a senior at Huntington High School in Long Island. A hope I have for today is to share my observations about education inequity and to kind of bring attention to that through this panel. And I also want to be an ally by amplifying what other panelists have to say today and what they have to say about their experiences with it.
Hi, I'm Tola Zhao, and I'm a junior at Piazza High School in Long Island. And my goal for today is to help
Could you
students,
speak up, dear? I'm sorry.
to help students.
I'm a little hard of hearing.
To help students and educators come to a common goal to make education better for students.
It is afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joel Bosus. I am a senior currently attending Sewanwick High School. The hope that I have today is for this panel collectively to provide an input that will affect positive change in the educational system, as well as across the different diasporas that are within.
Hello, my name is Shimon Lawrence. I'm a senior at Roosevelt High School. I have many hopes for today's panel, but my main hope is that you all at least take one piece of knowledge and disseminate it into your various areas.
Hi, I'm a senior. I'm a freshman in college. I'm spacing out today. I graduated from Memorial High School, a member of the Sewanwick Central High School District. So Mr. Jaime and I have past experiences with each other. My hope for today is to enlighten members of the community on how to provide a channel for youth and adults to collectively find an answer to the issues that we face.
Could you tell us your name?
Sufi. Sufi. S-U-F-Y. Yeah. 18 years, people don't know how to pronounce it.
Hi, I'm Whitney Sussman. I'm a senior at John F. Kennedy High School in Belmore from Long Island. And my hope for today is to kind of get an understanding of other students' perspectives on racial and equity issues. And I'd like to learn more from administrators as well and have you guys understand the student perspective.
My name is Amanda Simon. I'm a 10th grader from Hewlett High School, and my hope for today is to verbalize my ideas and take in ideas that will allow change and greater understanding in our community.
Hello, my name is Janaya Cunningham. I'm from Alma Memorial High School. I am a junior, and my hope for today is to help educators and parents and other students will gain a better understanding of what we have to say and what students in general have to add to the conversation about racism. We are more knowledgeable than people think we are. Some people view us as just kids, and we're often overlooked because of that, but we have experiences and we have things to say, and I hope for everyone to have a better understanding.
Awesome. All right, well, welcome to you again and good afternoon, and we're going to jump right in with our first question. So, panelists, what made you decide to join the panel for today?
Okay. I think that Erase Racism offers a really unique opportunity for students to express our opinions directly to administrators, because I, as a senior, am not often talking to my superintendent. We're just in very different places. He's at Central and I'm at my school, and so this gives us a nice opportunity to directly speak about the things that we experience.
So kind of like what Gabby said, I think this is a great opportunity to kind of bridge the disconnect between students and administrators. And as a white student that doesn't really experience education inequity, I want to try to support what others who do experience it have to say and help bring it to the attention of everyone in this room.
I agree with both Gabby and Mia, and I feel that educators and students, we both have common goals. We just need to interact and really talk to each other about it.
I personally feel as though through Erase Racism, their Student Voices campaign serves as a medium by which us as students can not only express ourselves, but call attention to the different inequities that we see as educatees within our different school environments. And I joined the panel today because I sort of feel like I have an obligation to those, not just my age, but the oncoming generations, to advocate for them, those who cannot advocate for themselves, and those who may be able to but are unwilling to do so.
Thanks, Joel. Second half of the panel. I mean, it looks like you got something to say, Shimon, so I'm not going to stop you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think this is a great platform to have our voices heard, because we're the voices and you all are the votes. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to talk to each other and have a nice dialogue about what's really going on.
All right. Thank you. Anybody?
I'm gonna save it for a second.
Okay. All right. So here's the second question. How have your experiences in school shaped the way you think about and advocate for education equity? Anybody can jump in.
I think that my experiences in school differ. Like, there are my experiences that I go through as a human in school, and there are experiences that I go through as an academic. And so when it comes to things about race and about equity, school fills in, like, my experiences fill in all the gaps that I can't necessarily read in a book. And my school is a very safe place to make these observations about the inequity that does exist. It's sad that I do have to go to school to experience these things, but it's a nice microcosm for the world around me, and, like, to make these observations.
Thanks, Gabby.
So what's kind of molded my views on inequity in school is what we're taught, what books we read, and how a lot of it kind of surrounds, like, they're white authors, a lot of it is white history. In all the schools that I've been to, most of my teachers and administrators are white, and talking to a lot of my friends and peers who are white, hearing how it affects them, hearing how it affects their education and everything, it's kind of what makes it obvious to me that something has to change.
Thanks, Mia. Would anybody like to just expound on how it might affect some of your other colleagues when they see, you said, white folks in the textbook,
Authors,
white authors? So, yeah.
I'll touch base on it briefly. As educators, I'm sure you all are aware of the Eurocentric view that is taken in things such as history, for example. And I personally feel like through the Student Voices campaign and the Student Task Force that we can shift towards implementing different things, such as the multicultural opportunities that are available in other regions of Long Island that aren't, like, prevalent in certain, I want to say, segregated communities due to the socioeconomic disparity within them. There's a book published by Zaretta Hammond about enacting such multicultural opportunities within different school districts. And by simply informing yourself, whether it be as a teacher, as an administrator, or a member of the community, and spreading the information and knowledge that you garner through that, I think that we could definitely shift away from that Eurocentric view that predominantly European style of learning that is implemented in school districts, and sort of cater to the different ethnicities and backgrounds that are in the different school districts across Long Island.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Gabby?
Just like to expand on that from my personal experiences, by focusing so much on a Eurocentric sort of history and reading a lot of books by white authors, it pushes all of the minority groups together as one group of our own when we are all very distinct in different ethnicities and cultures. So like a little funny story from my elementary school days, I'm Hispanic, but my school is predominantly white. And in elementary school, there was one black girl in my grade of 100 students. And so in Black History Month, I would be apologized to by my peers when I am very, I'm Hispanic, I'm not black in any way, but when there's so much of a focus on white culture, everything else that is not white is made to be the same.
Thanks, Gabby. See your hand.
To further expand on what Joel and Mia said, I would acknowledge the Eurocentric aspect of history and how we're being taught in schools. History is told from the point of view of the conquerors, not the conquered. So it's important to know both sides of the story. Like recently, Columbus Day, Christopher Columbus came to America, and the simplified version what we were taught in elementary school is that he allowed Europe to expand their resources, and he lessened the divide between the old world and the new world cultures. But what really happened was about 5% of Native American population is left in America today, and it's kind of horrible. They were killed off with disease and weaponry by the Europeans. But what I'm saying is that we should expand our knowledge on other cultures. My school is majority black students, and so unless it's either majority black students or majority white students, it's not diverse. It's not diversity if it's one end of the spectrum and another end of the spectrum. So we should acknowledge other people and other views and other cultures. That's the only way we can learn how to accept others is by learning and interacting with them.
Excellent. Thanks, Janai. All right. So I'm going to just repeat that question just in case anybody wants to jump in. The question was, how have your experiences in school shaped the way you think about and or advocate for education equity? If you want to answer yes, if not, we'll go on to the next one. Yeah.
As a part of the small percentage of the black students in my school, I see the lack of diversity in my school, and I realize this lack of diversity is the reality everywhere in Long Island, and I want to fix this dilemma and really help people and students to see the culturally diverse world around them and to really just be aware.
All right, thanks, Tua.
Well, just like Gabby, I'm also part of a school that's predominantly white, and so because of this student demographic that I'm in, I feel that racism and equity is generally overlooked and kind of pushed aside just because they think it might make people feel uncomfortable or like just feel uncomfortable in some sort of way. So I feel like it's important that we all speak about it more and pay attention to it rather than just pushing it to the side because it's really important.
Okay, thanks, Whitney. All right, moving on to question 3. Actually, question 4. Why do you believe it is important for students to have a voice in policy decisions? Why do you believe it's important for students to have a voice in policy decisions?
So I think that it's important because students are the ones directly affected by this, and a lot of the time, things that students want brought to your attention might be something that policymakers haven't even thought about or think that isn't as important as something else, but in reality, like, it's what students are dealing with every day, and administrators might not even think about it.
Thanks, Mia.
Akin to voters having a say in what the representatives discuss in Congress, students should very well be not just entitled to providing their input, but do so out of an obligation to both their peers, their colleagues, if you will, and the incoming classes that succeed them.
Thanks, Joe. Anybody else?
I think students should be able to decide like certain aspects of their education because it's critical for them to have a say in their education because education is critical for them, like for their futures. So like their education should represent what the world is like, not just what one part of the community is like.
Okay. So Tulu, is that more like no homework, maybe? All right. Okay. We're gonna move on down. In what ways do you believe students are critical to policy change and reform for greater equity in schools? Please, Kathy.
I think that it's important for us to use our voices because most administrators have not been in high school or in middle school for a little bit, so you can sometimes
Play the safe.
like I'm part of a program where I speak to 5th graders about like making good life decisions, and I forget what it's like to be in 5th grade, and that wasn't even that long ago. So it's really important to hear the feedback of people who are experiencing things now because you become disconnected with things as time goes by.
Excellent.
I think students are kind of critical to being involved with this because until students kind of like take a change and make their voices heard, nothing's really going to happen or not as much will happen. It's always kind of been up to young people to challenge the status quo and make issues that they believe are important visible.
Thanks, Mia.
I feel like students are very much so, where they do play an integral role in deciding these policy changes because, little Star Wars quote, your focus determines your reality. And both educators and students have two different focuses, and it sort of provides an additional input from the other side of the spectrum, whereas it isn't always considered when these different things are enacted on the legislative level and on the school board.
Very good, Joe. Thanks for forcing me with you. So I'm just curious, what are some ways that you would suggest students get involved?
Personally?
I mean, you personally or anybody?
Taking it upon themselves to sort of foster a more intimate relationship with the administrators and that of the board. I find that not a lot of students interact with their Board of Education, if any, and that can definitely prove detrimental to not only them, but those coming after them, as I mentioned previously. Those coming from different socioeconomic backgrounds, that's what creates the inequality that moves to the inequity that you see and the disparities in the academic achievements with different cultural and career opportunities that you will have as an adult. And it's through that succession of economic inequality to inequity to disparities in the workplace that you see a succession of students not interacting with their board that may be able to very well help them in whatever situation or circumstances that they can be in, and not having their ideas and their thoughts brought across or addressed collectively on the community level.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Very good. Maybe a student board member?
Yeah.
Not my idea, Joe. All right, okay. Thank you. Any other responses on that?
I mean, to further add on, the student task force is one being a great step as a foundation for other students to look towards. Like, this task force is a source of representation within itself with the board, such as creating events such as this, where you're speaking to adults and members of the community. I mean, it's the unspoken, self-evident truth that a teacher ratio of 14-to-1, that one person was elected by that student. So why should that one person be able to decide what happens with those 14 students? Whatever the average is, we don't elect who's in the school board. Students don't. We play no role in. I mean, we can tell our mom and dad, "Mom, vote for this person." I mean, what's the likelihood that they will? Or they won't. Honestly, like, I'm 18 and Naya just pointed out to me that I didn't vote myself because I had so many other things going on. I didn't look at who was running. And how can students get involved with stuff like that? Like a student school board member, the likelihood of that coming to truth is not that high. But having students play a role in the voting process of electing someone who could represent us well. When chairmen, school board members, they don't cater to students, they don't talk to students, they talk to moms and dads and parents of those students about what we can do for your kids. But what do they really do? And what do the kids hear? What do the kids tell their parents about what this person did? Because we're not being involved in that voting process. So including a way where a student can give their voice, make their impact, or providing a source for school board members to talk to the students on what they would like. I mean, that's the whole reason you have student governments in schools. The student governments take polls, what would you like to see in your school? And we write it down of what actually happens.
Something my school district, I think does very well is having students become more involved with the higher ups. So not their principals, but the superintendent. There's something called the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, and
We have that too.
oh, all right. Yes, it includes the board, but it gives students an opportunity to voice their concerns and their opinions directly to the superintendent. And even though they do vary depending on the school and the district and where it is located, it definitely serves as a platform by which their ideas can be brought across, and the superintendent can be made aware of them.
Okay. So another slightly off-topic question, but related. So you all seem to have a little more knowledge than the average student and interest in equity. So how did you learn so much? How did you deepen your knowledge? What are some things that you did and I guess are currently doing?
Sorry, go ahead.
At my school, we have a lot of clubs, and we have a lot of clubs focusing on social equality. And so I decided to join a few, and I really was brought into this world of seeing like how the world is so there's a lot of inequity, and I really wanted to change that because I realized that it's not just going on globally, but it's also going on locally right around me.
Thanks, Tola. Yeah.
I mean, I've also become interested because of clubs, but it's kind of the opposite reason. I don't really have a lot of clubs in my school, and my school is very like academic based and academic focused, so we don't really have a huge focus on social equality and stuff. So I feel like that needs to be brought to a lot of schools that don't focus on those topics. And also, like growing up as an Asian American, I have experienced a lot of like social disconnects between other people, especially in my school, and yeah, I just feel like it needs to be spoken about.
Okay. Thanks, Whitney. Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm aware of these things because growing up, you know, I would always rant about things and things that I didn't like, and the school did this and the supermarket did that. And then you know, my mom would always tell me, okay, you said all of that. What are you going to do to fix it?
All right.
And that's the ideals that are instilled in my mind. Anytime I have a problem, I need to think of a solution immediately, or take some time and reflect.
All right. All right. Mia, were you going to respond?
I forgot what I was going to say.
No worries, we'll come back to you. Sophie?
I believe the fact of the matter is that we all showcase leadership capabilities that a lot of the generation that we share don't. Like, a lot of my generation, I don't see as leaders. I find a lot of Generation Z as followers. And the fact of the matter is that we're here because we share the same thought process of we need to make a change. Just as Shimon just explained, that he feels that this burning desire to fight for what he believes in. And I feel like that's what we all on this panel really share, that burning desire to make a change in the society that we live in.
Well, you know, I like leadership, so I have one more question on that. So part of leadership is really motivating people to follow you, right, and getting people engaged. And you're speaking to what a lot of leaders experience. People get engaged when they care about something, or maybe it benefits me. What are some suggestions you would add or really provide to get people really excited about equity? Because a lot of people say, well, you know, why can't we just all be like colorblind and forget this equity stuff? How would you get people motivated around this? And that's for anybody. Gabby?
A thing in my school, we do like culture nights, which is really exciting for other people too. Like we have Southeastern culture night, we have Hispanic culture night, we have a whole bunch of those different things so that we can all learn about other cultures. And I also think something that should come before everything else is acknowledging like the hurt that has happened from not acknowledging all of the cultures, because people, especially in my school that I've noticed, have struggled a lot with cultural identity because they're not acknowledged. So I think that addressing that and addressing the pain and realizing that it's there and that we can grow from it is a really nice starting point to make positive change.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Gabby. It seems like I felt some energy from now and then somewhere. Janai, it looks like it's yes, no, maybe. It was about to be raised, but if you want to.
So, we should learn from our similarities, because some people have experienced suffering or experienced some form of injustice, and other people have experienced a different kind of injustice. For like, one person may be experiencing racial injustice, and another one could be experiencing maybe sexuality injustice. And we should just relate with that, seeing that we are minorities, we feel this oppression, we feel this injustice. Why don't we work together and help emphasize our cause and help make a difference in our school?
All right, thanks, Janai. Okay, all right, I'm gonna move on to the next. Subi,
The only thing I'm thinking about right now is that becoming a leader, a piece of advice I have for them is you need to have that perseverance to provide that oh moment. Like, everyone has that moment where they're like, oh, it clicked, I realized the issue that I'm facing right now. So you have to have that will to provide that moment for everyone, to show them like this is what's happening, so they can click in their mind that the world they live in, and a lot of New Yorkers have this mindset that they only live in their own world. So, and you see it on the streets, everyone's staring in one direction, walking in their own way. Whether it's in Long Island or Brooklyn or any other borough or any other place in the world, everyone has their own mindset. So providing that moment where they can take a step back and view the world as a whole and the issues that we all face, such as inequity.
very good. All right, thank you, Subi. All right. Moving on, here's the next question. What would you like educators and leaders in the room to gain from today's panel? Second part of the question, what do you believe their role is to achieve greater equity? Gavin?
I hope that you all are more comfortable with this issue and how we all feel about it, because I've never had this sort of conversation with administrators before, so I'm not sure if you guys are really, you know that we notice these things, so I hope you guys know that now. And I also encourage you all to ask questions at the end on like how students may feel about certain situations and stuff like that. And you guys are really, you have the capability of making change happen, so I really hope that you take our words and implement them.
I kind of hope that everybody here gains like an understanding of how important it is to students and how students are directly affected by it. And maybe like if you haven't thought about it too much, then realize that you should like, I don't know, try to educate yourself around it and maybe think about it a little bit more when you're making decisions that surround policy and things that affect us students. And yeah.
I want educators and leaders to actively strive to create educational equality in schools, because since you guys are part of like parent-teacher associations and Board of Education, you guys have a huge like impact in what is implemented into schools.
I hope that many take away something of substance by becoming more proactive in bringing about change. A lot of administrators across Long Island and across greater New York as a whole have noticed the different faulties in the educational system, whether it be on a local level or that of the state. And while they have taken initiatives to provide opportunities, not everyone is able to take advantage of them because they do not have the means in which to do so. And so by catering to those lower income families, for example, and providing vocational training and specializing different approaches in which to equip different communities that are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds to take advantage of the opportunities that you are providing, that would be one way in which to take a step towards solving the inequity that we see in the different districts.
Thanks, Charles.
Okay. I'm just gonna say, don't forget the kids. That's the most important part. Don't forget the kids that you're representing. You know, go and talk to kids sometimes. Get to understand the kids and their problems. Because it's one thing to be aware, because you're here, now you're aware. And the next step is going into your districts and seeing what the problems your children are facing in their schools. And that's a part of solving these issues with equity.
So,
Educators are the stepping stone between students and their administrators. Personally, I don't have that relationship with my superintendent that Joel made. I haven't even I've never had a conversation with him. I've been in that school for 6 years. Like, that's kind of crazy. The only person in my board, or my school board I talked to is Michael Jaime right there. He's the only one who's ever made a change or taken that step to have a conversation with me about the injustices that we face, and I really want to shine the light on him for a second, that he's done so many things such as this. So educators are honestly the stepping stone with teachers alongside them as adult allies to making that change with school board members and superintendents and such.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everyone who's spoken, and I think that by students being able to talk to educators, that disconnect is just so important, because when the students aren't able to talk to the administration about what's happening in the school, I feel like the administration might make assumptions or not fully understand what's going on in the student body. So, yeah.
I believe that reaching out is everything. So we have to try to break the barrier between educators and students and try to make it a more collective environment where we're bouncing ideas off of each other and trying to create a more centered view of our school system and therefore create greater equity in our communal areas.
What I think is that we should start changing right now, and I want everyone in this room to not take what I'm saying lightly, or any of my fellow panelists lightly, because we are speaking from our experiences and we require this change. It shouldn't go from one ear and out the other ear. You may think that I expect change right now and fast change, but change should have already been happening and results should be right now. So what I've learned from my experiences, well, what I think is around the corner, Broadway, then the musical Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda writes, it's like planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. And we need to see that change. We shouldn't be the ones creating this change and advocating for this change now and never getting it and letting the next generation. It should exist right now. And in my science research class, well, science research in my school, we're planning on getting a $1,000 microscope, but students right now will never get to use it, but students later will. So it's kind of that unfairness and that disconnect. We should be experiencing change too, and not just one group of people. It should be happening now. It should have happened, and we need to get our act together.
well, that really leads us, sets up a beautiful segue to the next question. We know that schools in America have been experiencing segregation for a number of years. In fact, there is research that says schools are now starting to resegregate more in certain regions of the country. Accordingly, Long Island is one of the top 10 most segregated metropolitan areas in the country. Currently, it has 11 intensely segregated districts where 90 to 100% of the population is non-white. So panelists, based on your own experiences and observations, how has the state of segregation on Long Island affected student learning and education? Gabby starts off.
My whole entire life have just been around other white students, and I haven't realized it. You know what I mean? I wasn't able to see beyond that, and I wasn't able to see that there are other situations. So it really creates a disconnect in between me and a student who has an actually diverse school. And so my mom is a 4th grade teacher about 20 minutes away from where I live, and her whole entire class is Hispanic. And that's something that I've never experienced in my whole entire life. And so when I was told about this conference, I spoke to her about what it's like where her students are, and it's a completely different atmosphere. And she was telling me about how their science textbooks are obsolete because they are from 1984. But I have never faced that issue, but it just broke my heart that I have never faced that issue, and it came at the cost of going to an all-white school. So that is just something that I picked up on.
Thank you, Gabby.
I actually just moved to Long Island from Maine, so my school was like over 90% white, and I just moved to a school that I think now it's majority Hispanic, and I love it and everything. It's a great school, but I do notice a couple differences. Like in my last school, every single student, like from a young age in middle school, was pushed to kind of do like the AP honors class route ever since middle school, and that kind of sets you up for success in high school and like good transcripts getting into college and everything. And now in my school, I noticed that guidance counselors and teachers, they don't really like push students as much to try the harder class, or there's not as much resources for like extra help for harder classes. And I think that's just something I've noticed. I don't know if that's always the case, but.
Mia, just to be clear, can you say a little bit about the demographics of your previous school?
Oh yeah, my previous school, so I lived in Kittery, Maine, and out of my class, I'm not sure about like the percents and everything,
Sure.
but in my class we had like 5 students of color, maybe less. It was a pretty small school, but still mostly like over 90% white.
Can we jump in and ask some questions here?
Yeah.
I was gonna actually stop right now. It's about almost
Okay,
15.
it's a good time.
And we
It's a
have
good time.
about 15 more minutes before the end of the session. I just want to encourage everyone to fill out the surveys that they were given for feedback. We appreciate feedback. We need feedback. I did not pay for any endorsements. I will say that the reason why I ran for school board is because if my kids were the only kids that were successful, then I'm not doing the job that I should be as a human. So that's why I know him. That's why I speak to his dad occasionally when I see him on the street. And that's why I try and work with all of the kids on Long Island. And at this point, we'll open it up for questions. And again, thank you everyone for coming out.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question to Debbie and to Mia, both of you, because you seem to be in kind of opposite positions, you know, a Hispanic minority in a largely white school and a white minority in a largely Hispanic school. And to what extent do you think that that's due? It seems that in Mia's school, there are lower expectations than you had in your majority white school.
Yes.
Is that because of demographics, do you think, because of the way the population is, or because of fewer resources in the school itself?
I believe that it's because of resources. It's hard. I mean, clearly it's not the students' fault. It's more
it's
like,
not the students' fault.
Yeah, of course. I think it could be due to resources. I'm not like sure about like statistics or anything about resources, but I think that maybe most of my teachers and guidance counselors are white. Maybe there's like they're not meaning to do this, but maybe they have lower expectations of students because.
Is that a racial thing, do you think, or a socioeconomic thing?
Both.
Or both?
Both.
Yeah.
So in the respect for other folks that would like to ask some questions,
Sure.
I think we should move on. But I will say that we as school board members know how district lines are drawn, so that's something that we can take up.
That's right, that's right.
Okay.
Yes, please.
I don't have a question, but I have a statement.
Okay, we'll take it.
First for the students, and then for everyone in here. First, thank you, you guys were all great.
Yes.
Great, you really. And I want to give you drama lessons and speak from your diaphragm. I can hear you in the back. Perhaps next year we will have mics, hopefully. First, one thing we have to take off out of the vocabulary is minority. The word minority, we have to take that out. Because we're not minority, we're not less than anybody, because minority means less than everybody. And we're not. We're equal. We're not less than anybody else. So I'm not a minority. I am not an American. I am an American citizen. I'm an American by choice. Not born into it. But the fact that we all have to remember, we have blacks from everywhere. I can't say what I am because I'm the legal nation. I have Spanish black, because I was born in Dominican Republic. I have African black because my father was from Haiti. My grandmother was from France. My grandfather was from Portugal. So I have it all. We have it all. And we're human race. Don't ask me for a race, I'm a human. I am not a minority, I am not. Don't ever use that word again, boys and girls. And okay, one more thing. For all of us, I'm leaving, I don't need a mic. For all of us that are here, we heard our students. Get out there, go to the games, get to meet them, know them by name. I know all my students in Amityville by name. They come up to me whenever I go to the games. I go to the soccer games, the basketball game, the football game. They have a game, the boys, the kids, our kids, which are our students, are participating in something, I'm there. And I want you all to be there for your kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So, hi, my name is Karen. I'm a board member of Baldwin.
Hi.
And I was just having a little mini conversation back here. And the question I have, I guess, is, I think the resources, whether you have resources or not, is secondary. I'm curious to know from each of you, or from whoever would like to answer, the expectations. If you met people who had low expectations, because you could be in an all white or predominantly white school, and still someone you encounter have low expectations of you.
That's right.
Right? And not expect you to do well, even though the resources are there for you to do well. So my question to you, sitting there just like, can any one of you speak to what it's like in terms of the expectations of teachers or guidance counselors or the people you've encountered in your education experience?
Okay. Well, everyone knows stereotypes. Everyone has stereotypes in their heads. Everyone thinks about them, regardless if you speak about them or not.
Right.
I feel like those 100% play a role in teacher expectations, parental expectations, like academics, like your peers' expectations. And I think that in the situations that Gabby and Meyer, and I feel like they both experience both opposites ends of the spectrum. And I feel like just the whole stereotypical things to do with different races and different situations, those all play a role in all of that. So I agree with that. It's not technically the resources, it's more just the perspective of different people. But, yeah.
Yeah.
I always got a little I'm so sorry for you, ever since I was growing up, oh, do you need extra material, do you need extra this, do you need extra that, which I never felt that I needed because I'm pretty independent and I always saw myself as capable. And then I have the resources where I'm able to succeed, so I have been academically successful, and then I've gained extra praise for it. It's I rose above something, but being Hispanic isn't an obstacle whatsoever. It's just who I am. So yeah, I definitely feel that, and I definitely feel when I was growing up, my teachers giving me a little extra love because they felt bad, and I was wait a minute, there's nothing to feel bad for. Yeah.
I'm capable regardless to who or what I look like.
Right.
It's part of the reason I went into was to be a teacher. I had a teacher who had no expectation of it. He did nothing to help me with math. And that is why I went into becoming a math teacher, because I felt like everyone can learn. Everyone.
Absolutely. We'll do Janaya, Amanda, and then we'll come back to Whitney.
Okay, I would like to say about my school. So I go to majority black school, and what I said at a previous racism panel last year, I said that students in my school will cry if they get 99s. So there are those high expectations. We expect students in my school, they get accepted into all 8 Ivy League schools. We can break those expectations. They don't exist for us, and what people think is not really true, and it's not really accurate. And I think we should all identify that we are better than those stereotypes, and we are better than those expectations, because we all can overcome them, and we all show difference.
Yes. With equity and access being a big conversation with students and board members, and we know that the biggest issue a lot of times is lack of resources. If you could speak to your board members around budget time and ask them to give more focus to a specific area that would help level the playing field for all students, what would that be?
That's a good question.
I think it varies per school and per specialization, if you will. Sewanok High School, for example, the programs vary per school, but also by like locality. The central high school, right, Sewanok, we bus in students from the 4 other high schools in the district just to partake in district programs like instrumentation and automation for a pre-engineering course, or auto mechanics if you want to be a mechanic, or cosmetology, or A++ technician, computer technician. But let's say I go to Sewanok and I am very avid about drumming, and I want to compete competitively in marching band. I wouldn't be able to do so at Sewanok, whereas at Floral Park, for example, they compete competitively for marching band. It's not like the district as a whole is incapable of doing it. It's just sort of like each school has their own little niche that I don't want to say more resources are delegated to, but at Floral Park, they compete competitively for marching band, whereas at Sewanok we do not. At Sewanok, we sort of host all the different district programs that different schools can partake in, but you won't find similar things at other schools. Like, we have AP Calculus AB, but at Floral Park they have BC. You wouldn't be able to take advantage of an opportunity at your school if it isn't provided there, but it may be provided elsewhere in the district.
First, I think that talking about budgeting time is pretty hard because there's a lot of stuff going on, but I feel like the answer you're looking for is something for all schools in general.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so first thing I'm looking for is related to the argument we had earlier, or the discussion we were having earlier on Eurocentric curricula. I feel like providing more culturally diverse curricula is one thing that resources could be budgeted to, or teacher representation. I've never had a teacher in my entire life at my school who looked like me, or was from the same country as me. And that's a sad truth, that I've never had someone like that. So either one of those two would be my starting points, culturally diverse curricula or teacher representation.
Amanda and Whitney, did you all want to jump in? I know you're good.
I wanted to answer the previous question.
Please.
So I was trying to recall a time where I thought that the expectation was lower of me because of my race, but I just can't, because I personally feel as though if I set a high expectation for myself, whatever anyone else thinks about what I can accomplish doesn't matter, because I have high aspirations for myself. So even if a teacher puts on a guise that they care about what I want to do and they have high expectations of me, and they're thinking in the back of their head that they don't think I can accomplish anything because of my race, I just don't pay attention to that, because I have expectations for myself and stuff that I want to accomplish to set the bar for my people who come after me and want to do the same things that I want to do.
How did you develop that, those high expectations?
I feel like I'm a product of my environment, and my mom's right there.
Yeah.
He definitely he instilled values in me that I have to aim high for myself, even though there are preconceived notions about stuff that I can achieve because of my race. I have to make sure I have tunnel vision in terms of what I want to accomplish, because what anyone else thinks about me doesn't matter. It all depends on what I think about me.
All right. Let's go.
When we come back, could the students introduce themselves again and tell us if they are part of student government, whether it's just at their class, like class government, or at the school level, or at the district level, if your district has a district-wide student organization, and whether you were elected or self-selected to hold those positions. I'm very curious to know what brings you here and to the attention of the school boards. Okay?
Very good.
Can we do that?
All right. We're at about 1:27. One more?
227.
You can do one more question. Yes. And then
I'm just curious if the students are aware of when board meetings are held, if you've ever attended a board meeting, if there's anything we could do to make you feel more comfortable coming to board meetings.
7 o'clock at night on the Tuesday.
If you ever read the minutes.
I am part of my school's government, so I'm class president for my grade, so I am the representative for our school at our board meetings, and so I tell them what's happening at the school and issues that we have. They're very nice people and listen very nicely. Just usually the things that we talk about aren't race, so I think that
I was
this
wondering,
is.
do you think there's a way that could be brought up comfortably at a board meeting?
This, with you all, I feel like that would be great. I think it gets a little awkward because I've never, in any of the schools, elementary, middle, high school, never been a black teacher in any of those schools that I've been to. Same thing with the board, there's not a single black board member. But my principal's Hispanic, so he's new. He's from last year. He's our new principal. So I can talk to him about stuff like this. And I've actually had conversations with him about cultural identity and how we struggle with stuff like that. I'm talking really fast, I'm sorry. But so he would be my gateway into that. It's just it's a hard conversation to have when it's going to be full of a whole lot of I'm sorry's and if I bring, you know what I mean? But it's definitely possible.
Well, I know I'll be reporting back on this event at our board meeting, so thank you.
Very good.
I also think that board members or whatever, even if you're all white, I think even though it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, you need to get comfortable in the uncomfort of that because it's an important issue that we need to talk about. So whether you're comfortable or not doesn't really matter. It needs to be talked about.
Right.
thank you, Mia. And I'll just add to that, to the other response to close out this part, just because we have to take a break. We're at the very end. I'm sorry. You can come back.
Just like to make a suggestion.
A suggestion?
Yes.
Is it quick?
It is very quick.
Okay.
I want to thank the students for their input. What we do in our district is called Pizza and Conversation with the Board. We meet with the high school students twice a year. We invite about 60 kids, maybe 30, 35 show up. And it's a conversation with the Board of Education. We break into groups. We have some suggested questions to spur the conversation. And it's an opportunity in a smaller setting, which is what you was talking to speak to the board directly, what you like, what you don't like, what you're proud of, what you'd like to tell the board, what you'd like to see change if it weren't for money. So it's just a suggestion people might want to do.
Very good, very good. So what we would do at this point, I want to do two things. One is I definitely want to thank the panelists, please. Thank you as an audience. You're free to come back. We're going to take a 15-minute break, and then we'll start again at 2:45. Nice job.